soon as you walk into the stag in the morning and we take those birds out of the box, there's a smell. And that smell is the Burryman.
We came across him in Tesco car park and it was just a wonderful moment and changed my life.
Community, because it's community that keeps these things going.
It's a Burryman team, but it's friendships that are the main thing for me. We've made so many friends.
The important thing is the Burryman now, today.
And I fully didn't appreciate the amount of alcohol that can be drunk on a Burryman day.
It is the endurance, a day of endurance.
It's such a kind of detailed and really, really painful in a lot of ways act of care for the place and for the people in it. And that kind of floors me every year about the Burryman.
Hello and welcome to Weird in the Wade. I'm Nat Doig, and on today's episode we're going on a journey, a very special one. It's a wander away from the Wade to the banks of the Firth of Forth in Scotland, a little summer holiday if you like. I recorded most of the episode last year, and it's all about one of Scotland's most enduring and unusual folk customs, the Burryman procession, which I was privileged to join last year. Sit back, pour yourself a cuppa, maybe something stronger, and enjoy this episode about one of Britain's most unique folk customs. Welcome to Weird in the Wade. A podcast about all that's weird, wonderful, and a little off kilter in the town of Biggleswade, in Bedfordshire, and its surrounding area. Whether it's tales of phantom fighting men, the Potton Road poltergeist, haunting hounds, or the devil's toenail that you're after, or maybe a graveyard ghast, or eccentric character. Criminal conspiracies, or the Great Swan Mystery of 1935, which, yes, I promise I will tell you one of these days. Weird in the Wade will have something for you. The stories may be local, but they're never parochial, and will speak to you today, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Weird in the Wade. Hip, hip, hooray! It's the Burryman's Day. That is the cry accompanied by the ringing of a bell that has reverberated through the streets of Queensferry on the south coast shore of the Firth of Forth for at least 300 years, and probably for much, much longer than that. Always during the first weeks of August. In recent times, this cry has been heard on the second Friday of August, but previously it was the second Thursday. The cry heralds the arrival of the Burryman. To see images of the Burryman on the internet or photographs in books doesn't do him justice. Yet they do capture the strange, unsettling look of him, covered from head to ankle in the large, sticky and spiny seed heads of the burdock plant, including a balaclava of them covering his face, leaving only small eye and mouth holes. He is a weird sight indeed. He looks like a man covered in bees or overrun by vegetation, a 1970s Doctor Who alien or folk horror apparition. Amongst his prickly apparel, sprigs of rowan berries and posies of wild flowers sprout. On his head is a crown of yellow and red blooms. This festive flourish softens his strangeness. He appears less like a man being punished and instead is one being celebrated. His 2 smartly dressed attendants hold up his arms, as well as 2 staffs which the Burryman uses when stationary. These staffs are also garlanded with flowers and flags of Scotland. This is no outcast stalking the steep streets of Queensferry, but one supported, quite literally, by the community. I had wanted to see the Burryman in person for a while. I have friends who settled in Queensferry some 20 years ago who introduced me to the seasonal parade, and this year I finally got my chance to visit. To not only join the procession, but to meet and interview the Burryman and his attendants as well. Throughout today's episode, you'll hear from some of the team behind the Burryman festivities, as well as an interview with Andrew Taylor, the Burryman himself. I'll let the team members introduce themselves here so you'll know who they are. And I am so grateful to them for taking the time to speak with me, both last year at the event and over a Zoom call back in May.
My name is Claire Taylor. I'm Mrs. Burryman. What do I do? Probably the main part of the day is the timekeeping. And generally just checking in on Andrew, the Burryman, and Andrew and Duncan, making sure the guys are okay. And just generally being there just for everyone.
My name's Erin Farley. I'm a long time sort of lover of the Burryman, and it's a total honour to be a wee part of the dressing team as well in recent years. I do feel like Claire was a wee bit unfair to herself, because I feel like Claire does just about everything apart from being the Burryman bit.
So I'm Andrew Findlater. I should probably say that so it doesn't get confused with Burryman Andrew. And I am a Burryman attendant, so I escort the Burryman around by basically holding him up for the majority of the day. And there's another attendant that walks alongside us as well. Yeah, and we just keep an eye on Andrew. That's pretty much what we do.
I'm Doc Rowe. I've been, I suppose, documenting seasonal events, as I call them, throughout the British Isles and Ireland since the early 60s. And I came to Burryman first in 1979, and I've been there every year but one since 1983.
Hi, I'm Paul Wilson. I'm like Erin in the sense, a bit of a kind of bystander who has lately become a member of the dressing team. Kind of long time-ish bystander.
My day with the Burryman. It started early, though not as early as it did for the Burryman himself, who was at the Stag Inn by 6 a.m. to be dressed in the protective flannels and then covered by the spiny burrs of the burdock plant. The Stag Inn is a pretty white pub on the steep cobbled high street of South Queensferry, though you won't find any locals giving the epithet of South. But yes, there's a North Queensferry too, just the other side of the magnificent Forth rail bridge, which dominates the view here across the silvery Firth of Forth. My friend Michaela and I waited outside the Stag Inn from around 8:30, chatting with a small crowd. Some were volunteers who had helped organise the festivities for this procession, but also the week-long ferry fair, of which we'll hear more about later. There were children ready to help with the collecting of donations. And then there were locals out to wave the Burryman on his way. I was surprised also by the number of people like me who had travelled from other parts of the country and even the world to witness this custom. It was a modest but lively crowd. The bell ringing alerted us to the emergence of the Burryman. First, his staffs were brought out, festooned in flowers and Scotland's lion rampant flag. You know, the yellow and red one with the lion on his hind legs in profile. Next came the Burryman's helpers, 2 men dressed smartly. They had blue waistcoats and tartan ties. Then the Burryman emerged, the only time he appeared unaided that I saw. He loomed in the doorway, like a bear walking on hind legs. Both more comical but also more frightening than I had imagined. When I viewed him from a distance, thinking of him as a bear, he seemed quite sweet and comical. But close to, when you see the human eyes and mouth vulnerable in their armour of spiny burrs, it felt somehow unsettling. As the rest of the day would continue, there was a lot of standing around and waiting for the taking of photographs, the greeting of friends and well-wishers before we were on the move. The procession set off with the bell ringer leading the way, a young man with a surprisingly loud and clear voice. Hip, hip, hooray, it's the Burryman's day. My first impression was that there was something of the Pied Piper about this custom, the bell ringing out the rhythm of our steps, our strange leader walking at a surprisingly brisk pace for a man covered in sticky burrs. We followed a ragtag of the curious, the involved, the custodians of a tradition some had seen their grandparents take part in. There was a sense of time, of a long thread stretching back to who knows when. Just the simple but impossible to resist pull of a rhythm and a purpose that is only to follow. But within minutes, that spell was broken when we stopped for the first time. We were at the Provost's house, an important figure in Queensferry history, though no provost lives in this house now, but a rather ornate lamp outside marks the last provost's sojourn here. Instead of a provost, the door opened and children spilled out down the steps and onto the pavement. There'd been a sleepover and there were excited chatter about breakfast and how much sleep they hadn't got. Amongst the throng, the Burryman took his first whisky of the day. There would be many more. Now, this very important part of the custom seems to be less ancient than I guessed, or possibly it was just taken for granted in the past that the drinking of whisky would be involved in the celebration, so that the older newspapers I've read didn't comment on it. But much of the 19th century write-up of the Burryman's spectacle focus on the collection of money rather than alcohol. But as so many pubs have always been involved in this, and always will be, I am sure there was drinking aplenty in the past as well. I asked those in the crowd what they thought the Burryman's tradition was all about. There was one word that was repeated over and over again. Community. It didn't matter which historical version of the origin story for the Burryman you believed in. They all believed it was about bringing the community together.
Community, because it's community that keeps these things going. You know, we can all keep looking to the past and things like that, but, you know, the tradition is in the here and now. It's what we're doing on that day. That's what keeps it present, and that's what keeps the tradition moving forward.
The important thing is the Burryman now, today. This is alive and well and, you know, continuing. It is the community, you know. They come out. What you sense every year is quite often the loss in the community. There are certain people that are always there, seem to be out the drinks and the money, and then suddenly they're no longer there. And I think this is one of those sort of events that brings that home very strongly. So community sense is for everyone.
We'll look at some of the historical theories later in the show, but what is clear to me is that in 2024, the Burryman procession is about bringing the community of Queensferry and beyond together in a peaceful, creative and constructive way. It's about building and strengthening bonds. And yes, it's a good luck charm for the town as well. The Burryman might be casting out bad luck or evil as he walks. He might be bringing luck and bounty to Queensferry through suffering in his spiny costume. But it's all for the same reason. It's for the community. And so began the strangely hypnotic rhythm of the morning. Some fairly brisk walking, the ragtag group behind the Burryman growing and shifting along the way, and then stops for either whisky or to pet a dog or greet a baby. Small children would emerge from the houses, clutching their parents' legs, burying faces in fear at their first glimpse of the Burryman. But they all plucked up the courage to look, to approach, to take a sweet or chocolate from a bucket. Many greeted the Burryman cheerfully. Many babies were brought out in their parents' arms to greet the annual visitor like he was Father Christmas. Now, my friend Michaela, who has rung the bell for Santa Claus in the past around Queensferry, says both processions have their similarities. By mid-morning, the Burryman was running a few minutes late to his published schedule, and Michaela and I dashed back to her home because the Burryman's delay meant that the folk band practising at Michaela's house, her husband Andy being the bassist in the band, the Blue Moon Pickers, would be able to serenade the Burryman as he passed by. This was such a lovely addition to the Burryman's procession. Everyone stopped to hear the music. The Burryman himself seemed to be genuinely pleased to hear the band play.
Hey!
Michaela and I rejoined the procession, noting that in just half an hour that we'd been absent, the crowd following the Burryman had grown, with now visitors from the US and other parts of Scotland joining. One lady was overcome with tears at hearing the traditional folk music. Not much further on, we came across a man playing a ukulele who sang a comical song to the Burryman, and onwards we walked. The streets we paraded down were ordinary streets, not grand houses, but semis and terraces, council houses, flats and retirement bungalows. The Burryman is for all the community, from the provost to the very youngest and oldest, from all walks of life. The first significant stop of the day was around lunchtime at the rugby club, where the Burryman's attendants were able to get a drink and the media lined up to interview the man himself. And this was where I got to speak with the Burryman and his attendants about what the Burryman means to them.
So first of all, hello Burryman, I'm very pleased to meet you.
Hello.
What's your name when you're not the Burryman?
My name is Andrew Taylor.
And you've been doing this for 13 years?
Yes, correct, yes.
What's the best thing about being the Burryman?
Oh, that's a good question. Best thing is quite a lot. Best thing about do you know what? Because it's such a unique tradition, I love being part of that, because there's not many Burrymen. They can say they've been the Burryman. So I suppose I like that. I like being, it's like I'm part of a unique group that I've done this absolutely fantastic tradition. So I suppose that's my favourite. Plus the whiskey.
And how many whiskies do you think, to drink?
I've been in the more, I've had 5 or 6 already, so maybe another, 8 or 9, 10.
Oh, fantastic.
A few.
And have you got a favourite whiskey?
My favourite is Dalwhinnie.
Oh, I like Dalwhinnie too. Yeah, good.
So if you can let everybody know in Queensferry,
I will.
Yeah,
I'll put that out on the podcast so they know. Thank you so much for talking to me. I will ask you the one other question though. What's the worst thing about having to be dressed up like this all day?
Oh God, I do really. I suppose like the normal stuff, the heat.
Yeah.
Can get quite scratchy, but yeah, that. But you know, I mean that. It's overshadowed by the sort of uniqueness of the and the amount of people, and so it's fine. But yeah,
it's worth it.
It's a wee bit uncomfortable, so yeah.
But it's worth it.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can I steal one of your birds?
Of course.
Is there somewhere I should steal it from?
Anywhere you want, that's fine.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I will. I'll steal a bird from there. Hopefully it won't be too obvious. Oh, it is. I'm going to put it back. I'm going to steal one from here that's less obvious then.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Findlater.
Duncan Thompson.
Thank you so much for breaking from your duties of.
It's okay.
What are you? Are you the Burryman's attendant?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And how long have you been doing this for?
13 years.
13, both of you?
Yeah,
both of us, yeah.
So we've all done it 13 years. So when Andrew took on as Burryman, we all just became a team.
And did Andy pick you, or did you have to apply to be his attendant?
He asked us, in the pub after a pint.
Excellent.
He gave us a couple of these and then we did it.
Yeah, and do you remember coming to the Burryman as children and seeing it?
I didn't, because you're from South Queensferry. I'm not from South Queensferry, but my wife is, so I heard about it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I see it.
Yeah, and what about you? You were...
Yeah, I've kind of grown up in Queensferry, so I've seen it as a little child and I was petrified.
Yeah, he's scary, isn't he, if you're little? I would have been scared.
Yeah.
But he's a goodie. He's here to help, isn't he?
He is, yeah. Bring good luck.
Bring good luck.
And I think he does that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I hope he does. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's always a good fall one.
Yeah. And what do you think the best thing is about the whole tradition?
I think the best thing is the fact that it's one of its only surviving traditions left in Scotland. It's similar, and I think that's good that we keep it going.
Yep.
And I also just think it's good for the community. I think the community are really behind it.
Yep.
And I think that's the most important thing at this day and age. You need community, don't you? And I
It's
think
like a generation of community. You have grands, parents, kids. You kind of see it every year. Well,
babies have been brought out to see him, haven't they?
the first year we did this, I remember the first time we go to,
like a day or
it's a
two
little
old.
baby. That baby's now 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Going to high school.
That's amazing, isn't it, when you get to see that kind of continuity?
And I think when we did it over COVID and we weren't sure whether we were going to be able to, I think there was a real worry that we would be, I don't know, I suppose, ousted from the community if we didn't do it, because you've missed a year and it's going to, you know what I mean? And obviously we needed to do it, and actually it was actually really emotional. We did it with masks on, but because there was no actual fair that year, but they put the flags up in the high street for us, and everyone came out and everyone socially distanced, and the police helped us, and but there was people crying actually when we were doing it. They were really emotional, the fact that and it gave a bit of normality to their life.
Oh, exactly. That's amazing that the pandemic didn't stop this, centuries old.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
We just had to change things a little bit, didn't we?
No, we did, but we did it.
It was at this point that we left the Burryman parade to grab some lunch for ourselves. Later in the afternoon, we went down to the shore to wait for the Burryman to come past before he ended his 9 hours of walking and whiskey drinking through the streets of Queensferry. It was here I met the lady who had joined the Burryman for his lunch.
I'm Jennifer Knight.
So I've been told that you fed the Burryman today.
Yeah, the Burryman comes to my mum and dad's house for lunch.
Oh wow! And what did the Burryman eat?
He had a cup of coffee drunk through a straw and a packet of pork scratchings.
It doesn't seem like a very substantial lunch, considering the amount of whiskey he drinks.
I think it doesn't. The whiskey takes over from reason food. So he just has a bit of a chill out. And then keeps going for the rest of the afternoon.
Oh, that's amazing! Thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. In the shadow of the hulking orange Forth rail bridge, the Burryman appeared, led by a piper now, and with a significantly larger throng of followers. He was piped down to a stage at the bottom of the high street, where the Burryman removed his spiny costume in front of the crowd, and his hat was given to a distinguished resident of the town. The history we know about. We can be pretty sure that the Burryman, in a similar form to the way we know him today, dates back to at least 1746, as when the Victorians started to take an interest in such things, an elderly resident was traced whose grandmother was alive at the last Battle of Falkirk, which was in 1746, and she remembered the Burryman parading in her childhood. There were also records suggesting that the procession was a regular occurrence in the late 17th century. But even Sir Walter Scott, who had a dedicated passion for such things, could not trace evidence of the custom further back than this. The Victorians and then many 20th century folklorists and historians were pretty sold on the idea of there being ancient pagan roots to all manner of folk customs, including the Burryman. But in the last 50 years, some of these assumptions have been challenged. When Victorian newspapers sweepingly declare that the custom has been around for time immemorial and with clear pagan roots, then you have to take it with a pinch of salt. I will come back to this shortly because, unlike other customs which can be linked to the Christian church, the Burryman seems to sit somewhere else completely. His origins are far less tangible than some other folk customs and far more intriguing. But what did astonish me was when I read a newspaper account of the procession from 1860. That's 164 years ago. Here's what the newspaper article said.
The Dunfermline Press, 16th of August 1860. South Queensferry, a singular custom. The annual fair of this borough was held on Friday the 10th, with the usual races and amusements having been preceded on Thursday by the perambulation of the Burryman, i.e. a lad covered all over with burrs, small apertures alone being left for seeing and breathing. When stationary, the Burryman resembles a knight clad in chain armour, with flowers to represent plumes of feathers on the head. When, however, he walks, the rocking motion occasioned by the legs requiring to be kept wide apart gives him at little distance the appearance of a bear. He has generally at least 3 attendants, 2 of whom support his arms on each side by holding the ends of sticks, which are grasped in the middle by the Burryman, the tops of the sticks ending in bunches of flowers. The 3rd attendant collects the money which is usually spent the next day at the fair. The origin of this singular custom, notwithstanding the exertions of the late Sir Walter Scott, is lost to antiquity, and was a matter of speculation as far back as the reign of Queen Anne, when, to a certainty, the Burryman performed his annual rounds as at present. The custom has been preserved by the young people alone, and handed down from generation to generation.
What struck me most about this article is firstly how strikingly similar the description of the Burryman and his attendants is. In the last 164 years, this has not changed, which is some feat in itself.
Yet it's clear from the Burryman team that the custom is still evolving.
I mean, I've actually known 6 Burrymans, I realise.
Oh, wow.
You know, the Jocko Hart, who was the Burryman before. I didn't see him as Burryman, but he used to regularly come up and criticise the state of the Burryman that year, you know. He was the local gravedigger, quite a character. And then there was Alan Reid, who did it for 25 years in total. But in between time, there was Arnie Friedrichsen that took over 1 year. Oh, and in fact, there was 2 Alan Reeds. Alan Reid Jr. did it 1 year because Alan, right at the last moment, actually, the minute before he was being dressed, he decided he wasn't fit enough to do it. So his young son, Alan, did it, who was back home from the Gulf War. And he went through the streets. So interestingly, the newspapers say that Alan Reid did the Burryman again this year, but it was actually his junior. So I include him. And then John Nichol started in 2000, who had a very, very almost academic interest in it as well. He was an artist. He looked at the aesthetics and, you know, that's why the flag disappeared as well, which is a bit of contention. Always wondering, everyone says, where's the flag? What's happened to the flag? And of course, when I first came up, it was a Union Jack. But it's interesting. We'll see whether that comes back again sometime. The important thing is the Burryman now today. This is alive and well and, you know, continuing.
When we did it over the COVID year, I mean, I will remember that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
The amount of times that we all just stopped and kind of looked at each other and we were like, we're actually doing this. This is quite phenomenal.
It was very emotional. Very emotional.
And we all had our face masks on, and you know, Claire and I were absolutely tearing our hair out, trying to keep the police happy with everyone's social distancing. And there was, you know, it was so different to what we were used to. But what was lovely was the fact that they put the bunting up on the high street for us for Burryman Day, and there was no fair on the following day. But the turnout was amazing. The vast majority of people were extremely respectful of social distancing. But what really shocked me was the amount of people that were crying. Like genuinely, and like actually, I remember having a conversation with the ex-chairman of the Ferry Fair, David Steele, and he was outside on the street almost sobbing because he was so emotional about the fact that he kept on saying, "Look at everybody! How amazing is this for the community?" And and that was really special.
What has changed is the Ferry Fair, which now lasts all week, not just a day. And this is why the Burryman now processions on the Friday, which is towards the end of the week-long festivities, and a forerunner to the Saturday parade and crowning of the Ferry Fair Queen and her court. The Ferry Fair has been in existence since the 12th century, in the time of Scotland's King David I. In 1364, King David II, the son of Robert the Bruce, reaffirmed the right to the fair in a town charter, which can be seen in the Queensferry Museum. The fair was originally in July, coinciding with St James's Day, which is on the 25th, a good 3 weeks earlier than it is today. Now, although there is good documentation for the fair's existence, taking us back almost 1,000 years, it's a shame that the records of the Burryman don't correspond with those records and go back so far. But certainly for over 300 years, he has been associated with the Ferry Fair, and it's hard to imagine why he'd have been invented in the late 17th century. It's very tempting to think he's been around for at least as long as the fair has. So let's have a look at some of the speculation about the history of the Burryman, his origins, and his links to the Ferry Fair. The speculation. To understand the speculation about the Burryman, it's important to understand how Queensferry got its name. You see, there was a queen, and in fact, she was also a saint, who popularised the use of the ferry, which gives the town its name. St Margaret was the Queen of Malcolm Canmore, and she popularised the ferry crossing as a pilgrimage route to St Andrews. The last journey she made was across the Firth on the ferry to Dunfermline Abbey. There was an older Gaelic name for the town, but Queensferry stuck in the memory of the saintly Queen Margaret, and the town became a burr and was granted its fair because of St Margaret's patronage. A burr is a town in Scotland which has been granted privileges, and thanks to Queen Margaret, Queensferry became such an auspicious place. One of those privileges was to be granted a fair. And here we have the first idea put forward to how the Burryman got his name and possibly came into existence. By granting the town a burr status, the townsfolk had certain responsibilities, one of which was to mark and maintain the boundary of their burr. In a time before widely used maps, this was important for travellers and traders as the boundaries played a part in the raising of tithes and taxes. So was the Burryman a play on words? He's the man of the burr who walks the boundaries covered in burrs as a kind of pun. He's protecting the town's geographical and symbolic place in the world. Of course, this doesn't mean he couldn't have existed before this point, but that his role became more formal, linked to the town's new status and the new annual ceremonies of marking the boundary. It seems like a very sensible hypothesis. As I mentioned above, this new burr status doesn't have to mean that the Burryman was invented in the 11th or 12th century, but just that his role got tied to something secular relating to the town's functions and ceremonies. The fact that he walks the town's streets today could suggest a link back to walking of the boundary. And let's imagine there was no Burryman before the town became a burr. Could the walking of the boundary in the summer months have led to those doing the walking becoming covered in the sticky burrs? Obviously not head to foot, but just picking them up as they went. And if dogs and horses were also involved in this walking of the boundaries, they definitely pick up burrs in their coats. Could that be how this all started? Young men marking the burr, coming home with burrs stuck on them, and then it just grew and became more and more elaborate. It's just a thought. There are other theories though, and it is tempting to think that the Burryman is older than the town becoming a burr. Maybe a vestige of pagan times, something the church had been trying to tame for a few hundred years, and then the burr boundary walk was the perfect opportunity to tie the strange pagan custom into something secular. You see, I'm not sure how you tie the Burryman into something Christian, especially using burrs limits the time of year when this can happen.
Another part of the meaning is just how specific it is to the time and place that it happens. The burrs are only in season for such a short time. You couldn't have a Burryman any other time of the year, and all of the flowers and the vegetation that decorates him is so local to that very, very specific place and time of year. And that's another huge part of the meaning of it for me, I think.
And it seems that the time of year for the procession has shifted over the years, with the custom happening earlier in July in the distant past, which corresponded with the herring fishing season along Scotland's east coast. When I made the episode last year, I didn't have time to explore in detail this link to fishing. Even though my husband's family all hail from Fife, and many of his ancestors were fishermen or worked in the fishing industry, and so the link greatly interested me. I'd heard rumours that there were other rituals and customs performed along the east coast of Scotland that were linked with the Burryman, but as Doc explained to me, these links were even more intricate and bound tighter than I'd first realised.
Yeah, we do know historically that there were Burrymans. It's like Mickey Mouse. There's only one Mickey Mouse. There's only one Burryman. So there were Burrymans around the east coast of Scotland. And it seems that the records we've got, it's usually a fishing industry where the catch was so low that they grabbed one of their own and they caught him in a net, let's say, and dragged him through the streets. And everyone threw rubbish at him. And of course, if you think of birds, they would stick. And we do kind of think that that's where it may have developed from. But there's all sorts of fanciful stories about King Malcolm hiding in the hill from the British. And he managed to cover himself with birds and escape. They're thinking this might be another commemoration of that event. You're getting people visiting now. I've even been told early in the day that they not knowing that I'm regular. They say, of course, we're looking forward to the end of the day when they burn the Burryman on the beach. Well, Andrew will be really thrilled to find out.
Thankfully, the Burryman is not burnt on the beach, and there's no evidence that he ever was. But other Burrymans across the east coast of Scotland is such an intriguing idea. The Burryman being a sacrificial character, a scapegoat. He suffers the spines and spikes of the burrs in place of the community. It's an incredibly ancient idea going further back than Christianity, and yet Christianity has this idea at its heart. Jesus died for our sins. Many ancient religions and belief systems had this concept of a sacrifice, not always literal, sometimes metaphorical. This person suffers so the community doesn't have to. Yet all the official records I've read do link the Burryman with marking the town's boundaries, or at least something similar. I wonder if the two customs, the rambunctious fishing tradition and the more stately boundary marking, somehow merge. Could Queensferry's Burryman have started as a poor lad being dragged through the town in a net, pelted with rubbish and sticky burrs, a tradition that sounds quite rowdy and desperate, a scapegoat custom where the young man takes on the bad luck so the fisherman's luck changes? Maybe it wasn't performed every year, only when the herring were in short supply. Could that tradition have been entangled with the burr boundary tradition? Beating of the bounds were important official customs across the British Isles in the past, tied into taxation and tithes, associated with bounty and prosperity. Could bringing the scapegoat together with this more formal parade have been seen as a way to bring luck every year and not just on the bad years? And maybe quell some of the rowdiest aspects of the fisherman's scapegoat custom? It's just a thought. But where does that leave us with the theories about pagan roots and traditions? Many want to believe dearly that the Burryman tradition somehow stretches back to a past shrouded in mystery, untouched by Christian concepts. So if the Burryman does have pagan roots, what could they be? And are there any clues in the modern celebrations? Green men. I am no expert on green men, but I highly recommend you read Icy Sedgwick's fantastic blog post about Jack in the Green, green men and foliate heads to get a really good explanation. There's links in the show description. But in a nutshell, and completely oversimplifying here, here's my take. Most of us with an interest in folklore and customs will have heard of the Green Man. King Charles included a foliate head or green man on his coronation invitations, for example. Many of us will think of them as a fertility figure who celebrates spring or summer in May traditions, Morris dancing and more. Men marching through cobbled streets covered in foliage and green costumes. Or as the foliate heads, carved faces found on church walls and ceilings with beards and hair of ivy and other vegetation. Many modern pagans include the Green Man in their belief system as a kind of wild man of the woods representing the life force of the earth at spring and summertime. But historically, it's more complicated, but also more useful to us in working out where the Burryman might have sprung from. So firstly, one of the more recent manifestations of the Green Man were young men and women bedecking themselves in greenery, dating back to the 17th century. These were known as Jack in the Green. This was when milkmaids and later on chimney sweeps competed in who could be the most elaborately festooned in greenery during May Day parades.
There's a great illustration from the 18th century in London of such a parade, and there is an uncanny resemblance to the Burryman, well, at his face at least, with the image of just eyes and a mouth appearing in what looks like a conifer tree. This was one of those Jack in the Greens. So was the Burryman an offshoot of these competitions? Although the customs look similar, there are key differences. Jack in the Green tend to be shapeless, more like walking bushes, covered in foliage rather than seed heads. There's also a competitive element to them, so there's more than one in the parade. I also haven't seen any evidence of them being popular in Scotland, but I will look into this more closely. They seem to be a tradition centred around the south of Britain. They also tend to be associated with May. Now, the second and slightly older form of these greenery-covered characters is more promising, partly because of an archaic Scots use for the word bury that I came across. Back in the 16th century, there is evidence of green men being employed as crowd control, as I.C. Sedgwick puts it. They'd be deployed at large events to protect and prevent trouble. These men, known as whifflers, were either bedecked in a shaggy, hairy costume and known as a wild man, or in greenery of some kind and known as a green man. I'm guessing it's an easy form of uniform for them to make, the 16th century version of high vis. And in a Scots dictionary, I discovered that bury can mean the following: boisterous, rough or rude. It can also mean crowded or a crowd jostling. There was also a children's game called Bury, which was about two lines of children facing each other across a street, and one child would need to get from one side to the other. The name of this game could possibly relate to that meaning of jostling through a crowd. Now, if Scotland, like 16th century England, employed similarly costumed crowd control at large events, like parades, processions, or fairs, then could they have been known as Burrymen, crowd men, men there to protect and prevent injuries and unrest? It's an intriguing thought, and it is only a guess. The role of this Burryman doing crowd control became more symbolic, a man to protect the town and prevent evil. It does need to be explored a lot more deeply, and by someone who has a much better grasp on the Scots language than I do, but it is just an intriguing idea. I'm also intrigued by that children's game being called Bury, and it's about territory and boundaries and the marking of a boundary of the burr. How many puns can the Bury in Burryman stand for? In an article about the Burryman for the periodical Folklore in December 1908, Isabel A. Dixon also speculated about the word burr in Scots. She is aware of it meaning shaggy or rough, like the rough coat of a dog. There's also a reference to sheep's wool, which she cites as being used by James VI. Is the Burryman a play on words about him looking rough and shaggy? Is he representing a wild man? She speculates that there is another meaning for burr in Scots, which is pine cone, and that maybe he is supposed to be covered in pine cones, and so represents the wild man of the woods, an ancient pagan symbol, she declares. Sadly, there is no evidence for this link to an ancient pagan symbol, but it's an idea that persists. Why burdock? The pagan link to the Burryman is something that is hard to ignore for all kinds of reasons. It's a popular theory. Many believe that the Burryman dates back thousands of years to a pre-Christian time, before secret knowledge of the wild things of the world were lost or driven out. It's romantic, even if there is little or no evidence to back it up. But I wonder about the burrs. Not just as a pun, but botanically and traditionally, could the burrs themselves have a meaning? Other foliage-covered creatures like the Jack in the Green tend to be covered by ivy, new leaves from ash and oak, branches, not seed heads. When thinking about the use of burdock, we can't ignore the practicality of it. The seed heads are what inspired Velcro. They stick easily, if uncomfortably, to make a costume. They're around in the late July and August. It could purely be that these two factors that they were chosen, availability and usefulness in making a costume. But could they symbolise something? Well, Culpeper's Herbal, first published in 1653, says the burdock plant is ruled by Venus, so the goddess of love. It is said to be good for the drawing out of poison of the snake, and the seeds themselves, the burrs, were good for drawing the womb. Now, this is quite odd, but was a common belief in the past that a uterus could wander about the body and cause all kinds of maladies. Basically, any seemingly mysterious woman's medical complaint could be blamed on the movement of the womb. So the burrs placed on her feet were supposed to move the womb down back into its proper place. Now, obviously, the Burryman now is a man, and so it's unlikely that this connection is useful. However, some of the newspapers from the early 20th century do mention that there was a tradition of a Burry king and Burry queen. So maybe that tradition is older than we think. And there is a link to women being Burry women. Culpeper also recommends the burrs to be soaked in wine for 40 days and taken for sciatica. I don't see those uses of burdock plant being tied up with the Burryman custom unless we can prove that there's been a Burry woman in the past. But it could be related to that idea of drawing out the venom or poison from a snake, because that could symbolise warding off evil, but it is tenuous. I suspect the burrs were used because they were there on the doorstep, plentiful and easy to gather, though obviously time-consuming and pernickety, as any of the current gatherers of the burdock for the Burryman will tell you. Why is the Burryman tradition so compelling? The answer to this question undoubtedly is unique to everyone who does fall under the Burryman spell. The team, when I spoke with them, were extremely eloquent on this point.
When you first arrive, and the bunting's up and down and along the high street in South Queensferry, and there's that really lovely moment where it's just the high street is so still and calm. It can be blowing a gale, it can be raining, it can be a beautiful sunny morning. But because of the build-up and over the week, you get everybody, oh, you're all ready for Burryman. There's a lot of stuff on social media about it. So when it comes to that morning, I think there's a real kind of atmosphere in the air. There's a real sense of anticipation and almost excitement when I see Doc and Erin and Paul and Ben and all these people walking along the street. You're like, this is happening again. We're doing it again, because we very rarely see each other the rest of the year. But I think, yeah, it gives us all a moment to kind of have a conversation. How's everyone's year been? And that's just as important as a part of the day as the actual tradition itself, really, because we've all come together for this one particular thing that we all really happen to be passionate and proud of.
It's such a kind of detailed and really, really painful in a lot of ways act of care for the place and for the people in it. And that kind of floors me every year about the Burryman. It's so much more than that kind of visual spectacle. And he is, like, visually, it's just amazing. But the real magic for me is the process of the day and the fact that it's such a team effort, and the whole sort of community that comes together and gathers the burrs the week before and goes round with them and sort of opens their houses and brings them out drinks.
And as I was reminded, it's not just the day. There is so much more to planning the Burryman.
The week before, because we have to find the burrs first and then pick the burrs. So thankfully the past few years, touch wood, this year will be the same. We pick the burrs along the old airport road. So we do that the Sunday before Burryman. And then, well, if it wasn't for all our friends and family, Burryman wouldn't happen, because it's a huge effort. We have friends that come out, family that come out and pick the burrs. And then we take them down to my mum and dad's, who live inside Queensferry, and we stay there. So we take them down to my parents' garage and we just debug all the burrs and whatnot and let them all crawl out. It depends on the weather. If they're wet, we'll let them dry a couple of days. But then the week beforehand, the process of taking all the burrs and making them into A4, A5 patches. Mm-hmm. So that's the time-consuming part. So the Tuesday, Wednesdays, pretty much sitting in the garage making all these patches, which we make about 40 to 50, Andrew, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a team of us that do it. And then on the Thursday evening, Andrew and Lynn both come up to my parents' house, and we have a traditional family meal before we start arranging the poles with the flowers, and also the bowler hat then gets dressed with birds and flowers as well. So that's a Thursday evening tradition where we all come together and do that. And then the nerves kick in really to the Friday. My Andrew gets really, really nervous. No sleep's had the Thursday night into Friday. And then the Friday morning we're up probably 5:30, 6:15. And then we head down to the Stag. So we're down at the Stag Head Hotel for 6:45, 6:30, 6:45. And then that's where we just prepare and meet everybody. It's a Burryman team, but it's friendships that are the main thing for me. We've made so many friends doing the Burryman, and friends that will carry on after the Burryman as well.
There was one thing that Erin said whilst I chatted with the Burryman team, which has not left me, and that is that the Burryman is undertaking an act of care for the community. This idea that he endures in both meanings of the word, that his tradition has lasted a long time, but also that his labours during the day are both long and arduous. But he does this as an act of care, respect and duty for his community, an act of kindness. There is something sacred about it, not in a formally religious sense, but something far more ancient that binds us humans together. He is performing a ritual of respect. Sadly, it seems that some who come to document his efforts do not understand this significance. I sense that all of the team were now a little wary of the media being involved with the custom, and for good reason.
Andrew is very generous. This photographer that wanted him to go to the doorway, and we just finished dressing, and as soon as you've got the headpiece on and the patches, the steam that's coming out of his eye sockets is phenomenal. And she had a little black screen that she held up behind, and she wanted him out of context, And I was saying, no, oh yes, I have to. And I said, well, no. And Andrew, bless him, said, oh, it's all right, I'll do it. And I was really fearful because I thought, he could have just collapsed. Fortunately, there was some air coming in. But I said to her, you've got all day to do this. She said, no, I haven't. I've got a plane at 10 o'clock from Glasgow.
Yeah.
I'm in to get the 1 or 2 shots of the Burryman out of context, black screen, because someone else has done it with the white screen. Really, really angers me that these guys just fall over themselves, shouting at, Erin and Paul and myself to move out the way, do this, do that, And it's usually just before we're getting round the corner to get to the old provost house. There's usually about 6 of them all piled on top of each other, all vying for the shot. And you say to them, there's plenty of time, you've got about 10 hours of, oh, no. They've got to take it, they're gone within 30 minutes. They're sending their stuff off to their agencies. They've done their thing. And then, of course, they don't get any context. They don't get this emotional value that we get.
In today's media landscape of viral clips that are mostly scrolled past, the Burryman's appearance in news feeds and TikTok videos on the second Friday of August are a staple. Each news site runs a story about this odd custom, generally focusing on how strange he looks and how quaint it is that the town of Queensferry persists in this weird tradition. And on a superficial level, that is the story, I suppose. The Burryman makes a striking image that maybe online consumers won't scroll past, but will click on instead. But in our fast swipe-by online culture, there's no time for nuance, for detailed explanations, nor philosophising on what the Burryman and the community means to us today. I have some sympathy for the photographers jostling for the photo that gets picked and used and clicked on the most. But I don't understand how you could be invited to be part of this tradition, even just as a reporter or photographer, and not sense the amount of respect there is in the team and the town for this custom. Ordering the Burryman about so that you can get a cool shot seems to me like ordering an ancient god about. Yes, it's Andrew beneath the burrs, and he's a lovely chap who wants to help, but he symbolises something completely different. It's like ordering the town's spirit of community about. I just simply wouldn't dare. And I wonder if part of the team's sadness about the way reporters and photographers have behaved in the past is about something bigger, something about the way we all behave right now, trying to grab the perfect picture, the perfect moment, the perfect anything. That drive to post more, be more, have more, work more, play more. When you stomp the streets of Queensferry with the Burryman, you can only live in that moment. A moment that also spans centuries backwards and hopefully forwards. Time becomes strange, spirally, entangled. All that matters to you are the people you meet and greet on the way, the steps you take, the laughs you share, your aching bones, that glimpse of the silvery Firth of Forth, the trees swaying in the wind, children laughing, some hiding behind their hands as they see the Burryman approach, the sun peeking out from behind a cloud, place, time, people, community. I don't know many places other than Scotland where a tradition like this could still exist, where not being from Queensferry, nor even Scotland, isn't a barrier to being embraced by the Burryman family. That sense of community is for the town, but also anyone who takes the time to be part of the custom. Respect is all it takes, and you are embraced as part of that community. In my opinion, it's a very Scottish thing, and one of the main reasons I love Scotland so much. In Scotland, it always seems to be more about not who you are or where you're from, but how you are that matters. Respect and kindness are rewarded, no matter what your background is. Another important reason why I think the Burryman endures and is so special is that although aspects of the tradition appear unchanged for hundreds of years, when you look more closely, the Burryman has always been evolving and changing with the times. In the early 20th century, there was a Burry woman to coincide with the suffragist and suffragettes' campaign for equal voting rights. Though Claire did not seem keen on the idea of joining her husband to be a Burry woman anytime soon. Slight costume changes, walking route tweaking, the wearing of COVID masks have all happened in recent years. This isn't just resurrecting a dead tradition. The Burryman is a living, breathing, growing custom which adapts and evolves, which keeps it relevant. A sure sign of health in any form of creativity is inspiring other forms of expression, which the Burryman does. And not just me making this podcast episode. There are musicians and artists and writers who are all inspired by the Burryman, not least Stuart Lee, the comedian. And it's thanks to his interest in the Burryman that Paul, one of the Burryman team, first discovered the Burryman himself, and a fantastic piece of music inspired by the tradition. I will let Paul tell you more about how that all played out, and I shall play the wonderful piece of music, The Burryman, by Daniel Quinn, featuring Duncan Grahl, to close this episode.
It's a CD. This is called The Topography of Chance, and it's a one-off curated by Stuart Lee. And one of the tracks on this is Daniel Patrick Quinn's Burryman, which is a kind of it's a pub conversation with a colleague of his. Daniel Patrick Quinn is a musician from Cumbria, and he was working in, I think, the National Gallery in Edinburgh as a guard. And one of the guys that he worked with, Duncan Grahl, spoke to him about the Burryman. He kind of known about him, and so the track is a kind of recording of the sort of conversation in a pub, overlaid with drones and kind of violins and things like that, and it's kind of very, very atmospheric. And I kind of became quite obsessed by the track and obsessed to sort of find out more about Burryman.
Burryman. Who is the Burryman? Do you ken the Burryman? The Burryman hails frae South Queensferry by the bridges. The Forth bridges as he stomps through the town. He's got to stomp because he's so plastered down with burrs. Burrs, sticky, spiky burrs, covered he is, head to toe. He goes stomping through all the town, stopping at all the hostelries, dropping in at offices, factories, and everybody welcomes him, gives him a something or other. It's usually alcoholic.
Where's the pubs? What pubs has he got in?
He goes to Hawes Inn, the famous Hawes Inn next to just underneath the bloody railway bridge. Underneath the railway bridge. Aye, frequented by Robert Louis Stevenson and many famous people after, including people that built the Forth railway bridge.
Have you seen them, Duncan?
No, but I'll be there this year. He goes 7 miles round the town. It's a long, long way when you're covered in furs. In the heat of the second Friday in August. This is Lammas time. The Lammas fairs throughout the Forth Valley.
What does Lammas mean?
Lammas means... Anyway, celebrating the harvest time. It's probably hoping for a good harvest each year. Good luck, good luck.
What's this about the Burryman taking on all the evils, all the sins of the village?
That's right.
I didn't know they were that sinful in South Queensferry. Are they a nasty lot, like?
No, I think they're okay. They probably were a seafaring group. Scapegoat? Some people call the Burryman a scapegoat. Not me. The Burryman's a hero. The Burryman has got to walk 7 miles all the way through the town. He's covered in burrs from head to toe. He can hardly see, can hardly move. Even when he drops into the alehouses, the taverns.
How does he go to the toilet?
I don't think they extend that far south.
How's she ken about the Burryman?
Oh, he's famous, at least locally. Children in the village, they're all scared of the Burryman. They're frightened to look at his eyes. So they just sort of peer through their fingers, you know. The Burryman, he just keeps stomping along. He can't stop, he's got a duty, a function. He's got to carry on.
He's got a duty.
He's got a duty.
Go on yourself, big man.
Go on, the Burryman. All the best, the Burryman. 3 cheers for the Burryman.
Here he goes.
Burryman will be here 2nd Friday of August. Go on yourself, Burryman.
See you next year, big man.
Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep going. Keep stomping along. Just keep stomping along.
All the best, Burryman.
All the best. Just you keep plodding on, Burryman.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
Yeah. You
Keep
take
going,
on my
Burry.
sins because they're too much for me.
Yeah, just stomp along. Go on yourself. I want to go at this Burry man. I'd like to have a go at this. I'll keep it. Even if I piss myself, I'll just keep burrying on.
Burry on, the Burry man.
Burry on. That's the word. Burry on, Burry man. What a man this is. This man is famous.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Weird in the Wade. I am planning to join the Burryman again this year on his perambulations around Queensferry, and I hope this episode has done justice to the Burryman, the team behind him, as well as the people of Queensferry who keep the tradition alive and evolving. I am incredibly grateful for the generosity of the Burryman team and others associated with the custom. I couldn't have made this episode without them. I'd like to thank Burryman Andrew and Duncan, the Burryman attendants, Claire, Doc, Erin and Paul for your time and generosity in speaking with me. Thank you also to Daniel Quinn for kindly allowing me to use the wonderful Burryman song on this episode. Thank you also to Michaela, Andy, Rasheen and Caitlin for your hospitality last year. Thank you to the Blue Moon Pickers for your wonderful folk music used in this episode. And thank you to the people who walked the route with me last year and shared your thoughts with me. Thank you, Wayne Gilbert from Erie, Edinburgh, for reading the extract from the Dunfermline newspaper. Thank you also to Icy Sedgwick for your excellent knowledge and expertise on folk customs, including the Green Man. There are plenty of links and photos on the show blog if you would like to know more about the Burryman and other related topics. Just go to weirdinthewade.blog. You can get in touch with Weird in the Wade on social media or at weirdinthewade@gmail.com. Next time on Weird in the Wade, we are heading back to England, to Lincolnshire, and another phantom army, and tales of otherworlders or the Fae, healing monks, and eerie landscapes. See you then. Thank you so much for listening to Weird in the Wade. Weird in the Wade is researched, written, presented and produced by me, Nat Doig. Theme music is by Tess Savagir, and all additional music and sound effects are from Epidemic Sound.